Okay, we're go. Hi, everyone. My name is Russ Buchanan from the eHealth Center of Excellence. I'll be serving as moderator for this session. It's my pleasure to introduce Ilya Beda and welcome from Beda Software and to welcome him to FHIR North to share his experience building FHIR form layout for structured data capture using FHIR. Ilya will be taking questions at the end of the session. And you can ask your questions and enter them throughout the session using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. A few housekeeping notes just before we get started is the chat in the virtual event platform will not be monitored by kind of our team here in the room or Ilya as the speaker, but you can use it if you're having technical issues or want to chat with other people attending the session. And this session is being recorded, assuming no technical issues, and will be uploaded within the next week. Closed captioning will be available at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I think, Ilya, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome, Ilya.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, everybody, for joining this session. Yeah, and today I'm going to talk to you about building forms, and we'll be focused more on the layout stuff. Let's start with some introductory. So I'm CTO of Beda Software. For the last 8 years, I have been building various kinds of application for healthcare, leveraging all advantages of FHIR format. I also very like to participate at conferences, share my knowledge, my experience, and contribute to FHIR itself. I participated at Questionnaire work group and contributed to SDC implementation guide. Yeah, so I'm like into forms, especially when it related to FHIR. Let's start with some introductory, and let's talk with how you can build a healthcare application. You can do it with some like classic approach, and when you do it classic approach, first of all, you need to choose some tooling. So in my case, I would choose between Python and JavaScript. For you, it may be some trade-off between .NET and Java, but it doesn't a big difference from the perspective that I provide in this presentation. So you choose your primary technology. After that, you need to create some kind of API. You can use Swagger and Open API to document it and do everything from scratch. After that, start the implementation, and finally get your backend, frontend, and some custom REST API between backend and frontend. And this is approach. I called it classic because it will work for any kind of application. If we are not talking about healthcare, it will work as well. But today we're talking about healthcare. We're talking about health app. And if you think that you would like to build healthcare with this classic approach, please stop doing it this way, because there is much better option how you can build your healthcare application. And this approach, I'm calling it FHIR first approach, means that you don't need to write any kind of backend code at all, or very less amount of code. You should use FHIR server and use FHIR API as your primary API for your frontend. So instead of creating some endpoints, some design and architecture for API, just use FHIR as your primary API. With this approach, you should be focused only on the frontend part. And this approach saves a lot of resources and help you to build apps very efficiently. Let's keep thinking how we can simplify development in more ways. And let's have a close look on the frontend. It could be some mobile application for iOS written with Swift, or Android application written with Java or Kotlin, or for me, it's mostly like web application. It consists of a lot of parts, but today we will focus on only on some dedicated part of your app, and it is forms, because forms is part of any application. It is the simple way how to take some data from a user and ingest by your application. Let's do the same trick with forms, and let's think how we can build these forms. And again, we start with some kind of classic approach. So I'm mostly doing web application. I prefer React framework with TypeScript. So I would start form development by choosing some primary technology for form state management. It could be very nice library called React Full Forms, or it could be a bit old-fashioned React Final Form. I just should choose something. After that, I need to choose tool for validation and implement validation with this tooling. Usually, I use something like Cube or Zod. And in some cases, you can just take JSON schema and follow and use JSON schema for your validation. Okay, you have a form engine, you have your validation, and now you start implementing a lot of code. You need to describe how to enable and disable element in your form. In some cases, you need to hide something, display based in some cases. Finally, you need a way how to proper initialize your form, how to load data from the server and put it in your form state. And once a user perform any action, update something in the form, you need to extract it back to FHIR resources. And it's look like, and it really is, that it's a lot of work, lots of software developer efforts will be required to implement all this stuff. So let's think how we can reuse FHIR first approach for building forms. I hope you already know that there is a questionnaire FHIR resource that could be used to describe a form. Basically, it's designed to describe some capturing from the user. So let's start with something like questionnaire first approach for forms. And if you would like to define all forms in your application with FHIR questionnaires, you will find out that questionnaire resource by itself is not enough. You need something more. And there is FHIR SDC implementation guide that fill all gaps. And if you use this implementation guide, yeah, you really can take questionnaire and use this as a primary tool for describing your forms. I have presentation about building various sophisticated logic for population extraction and changing form behavior with SDC. And on the slide, you can see a link of the YouTube playlist where these videos gathered. And I also post a link of this presentation to the chat, so you can follow this link and watch if you're interested in this part. But today we are going to talk about styling, because no matter how your form is advanced from the technical perspective, it should look better and it should follow some UI UX practices. And for styling, we need to start with a demo, because demo is the best way how to show styling and all this kind of stuff. On the screen, you can see a tool called Storybook. Storybook is a software that allows you to define your UI components. And now on the screen, you can see very straightforward form. It's a form to create patient. It has lots of input, each input on the separated line, and it's not look so good. We would like to see form in something like this. We would like to grow fields by their designation. In some cases, we would like to change widgets, because now for choosing gender, you need to do 2 clicks, but it's so less options, so you can just use 1 click to select gender. For mobile phone, you also would like to have some UI UX extensions. And let's see how we can transform this form into its more prettier version by using FHIR SDC implementation guide, some extensions, and so on. So for the demonstration purposes, I am going to use some example project. It's some kind of proof of concept that you can use questionnaires for all forms in your app. I decided to implement some very simple EHR system, and it is open source, and all links will be available, so you can play with it. Let's start with first simple case when we need to use some widget. We would like to change simple string input with widgets that allow you to capture phone with some UI enhancement. Let's open this form definition and see what we have for this input. So there is an extension defined in SDC implementation guide called item control, and this extension will allow you to define a code for your widget. Now we need just to add some extra mapping information on our front end, and in our case it is like this simple map that use name of the widget as a key and React component as a value. Let's go inside this element and see how does it work. So this element accept question item as a property. So basically it is this thing. Yeah. And do some kind of mapping from this question item into phone input. So if we go back to Storybook, you can see that there is this phone input. You can play with this input here in the Storybook. It is not related to FHIR, so you can delegate this work on the UI for front-end developers who are not familiar with FHIR. They just do what they good in, they implement some UI. And you as a FHIR expert just need to write this mapping between question item and actual input. Transform props, maybe do some extra logic and so on. It's pretty useful way of styling your forms. Okay, let's have a look on a bit more advanced example. I think this one, yeah. So this form is used to capture information about beverages consumption. We can choose how many times per week I consume some beverages, like one time, and what type of beverages. Like 1 beer per week, I think it's okay. Yeah. And let's see how we can enhance this form. So you can see that only 3 options here in the select. So let's replace this select with a set of panels that you can click on and choose it instead of using select. Like this. This component is also defined in Storybook, so we can play with it. Yeah, this one. Yeah, let's use it. So we can see that we mapped solid radio button widget for it. And let's do some changes. Okay. We need to choose a proper form here. Beverages. Yeah, let's copy the extension definition because it's like a lot to type. Yeah. Okay. Let's open the form one more time. You can see that now we have an updated widget. It is usable items. And now I would like to add one more UI enhancement. I would like to separate this none option from these two because it's kind of separated case. It's better from UI perspective to distinguish it. Yeah. In Storybook, we can check that there is a variation of this question radio when we have extra option on the right. And we just need to pass some extra information that we would like to show this button. Yeah, on the right side. To do it, we need to add extension. And this extension is obviously not defined by some SDC implementation guide. You need to define this extension in your own environment. Let's open it. So here I added extension adjust last to right. This extension of this FHIR URL of this extension, and I'm using them to define profiles for FHIR. You can use any other tool you comfortable with. It could be plain structure definition, it could be fish, but I prefer them. So once I define this extension, I can add it to the form. Let's do it. But there is one more important thing. So you can see that these extensions, they looks like a very big number of data, and I prefer to display extension in a bit another way. So now I am converting this questionnaire in first-class extension format, and you can see that item control became just a regular element of question item. It's more convenient in development, so I prefer this representation. Just last to right. Yeah, so everything is saved, and yeah, and if I go back to FHIR representation, it's still an extension, but for me it's more suitable to use first-class extension version. So let's choose back to it. Okay, let's check how our form changed. Yeah, the extension is using here, and this element is adjusted to the right. Let's check how it works inside. So for this solid radio button, I have extra TypeScript definition for this extension, and also I'm using this approach when I put extension on the top level for simplicity reason, because it's just simpler to write code this way. I can extract this extension value from my question item, and then based on the value, I just separate last option into a separated element, and then in radio items, I put it to the right. Okay, that's basically how it works. And let's see how we can replace this numeric input with slider. Slider is more complex element. So let's open it. For slider, we have much more options than just adjust last item to the right, as it was done for radio panels. We can choose labels, we can choose step, and add some help text here. So much more extensions will be required for it. Let's open this form. Let's see how it works. Yeah, so you can see that in this form, the slider is used. And if we go to the definition, you can see that there are a lot of extensions here. Also, it's like normal FHIR extension, but in more suitable way. And I can define whatever I want here. And if we go to the implementation, it's also pretty similar to what we have already saw, what we have already seen. But I need to define more items and pass these items into the slider component. So this technique, when you create extension and your extension pass as an extra property to your React component, is extremely helpful, because once you get a questionnaire and you would like to do some additional styles, you can do a lot of things with these extensions, and passing it to directly to React components, it's extremely simple and simplify development a lot. Yeah, the final step is playing with layout. Let's open another form like this one. It's test for diabetes, and you can see that here we have some empty space. It would be nice to move result to this area. Let's just do it. Let's open this form for editing. Yeah, and the first thing that we need to do is to create a group. Okay, and now by using item control extension, we can change how this group is represented. Let's open an updated version of form, and yeah, these two elements, they displayed in a line. You can see in the definition of components that I have a separated object for this group components, because the group components, they work with children, and they are a bit different from just widgets that basically live on your questionnaires. And you can see that I have a column and row group representations that allow me to build various kind of sophisticated UI. Now I will create UI that doesn't make sense from UX perspective, but it will demonstrate how powerful this just these two versions of group component. So first of all, I would like to add one more result. So we have 3 items in a row, and then I will add one more group. This group, I am going to use column widget, and let's copy this right here item here. Okay, let's see what we got. Not sure what went wrong. Basically, they should be displayed one by one. Okay, never mind. So maybe we can change using column somewhere else. Yeah, and if we open it, you can see that everything displayed like in a column. With these two elements, row and column, you can build any kind of sophisticated layout and achieve this behavior when you group some items and display them in order, whatever you in whatever order you want. And let's proceed with some final example for blood pressure. It's like a very painful thing, capturing blood pressure, because it's 2 inputs that actually should display as a 1 input. So if you just create a questionnaire, it will look like this. But we would like to have something more advanced, like 1 input with some label. First we capture systolic, and like measurement, something like this. So it's kind of combination of group and just item of combination of group component and item component. So yeah, and if we go to the definition, let's open it. You can see that I am not overriding here widget representation for the inputs. I'm using FHIR input control type for the group. Let's see how it works inside. This group is this group widget is pretty advanced. First of all, it checks that it has only 2 children, and after that, it do not iterate over rendering children with default way. Instead of it, it completely replaces the rendering. So you can see that in this particular grow widget, I embed two items. It's allowing me to build this UI. And for other cases, you may even replace the bigger part of your questionnaire tree. So in some cases, you need some sophisticated flow with models or with I don't know, some UI elements that interact with third-party integration, or in other cases, you can just on the group level, use some custom widget and don't care about all children, just draw what you want. It's a kind of workaround that works pretty well, and you can use it. Yeah, so basically that's all examples for today, and I hope now you could, and I hope now you can see how these forms with line-by-line elements could be transformed into its more prettier version. Yeah. In the conclusion, I would like to say that this approach with building forms as FHIR questionnaires is pretty useful. By leveraging tools like Storybook, you can decouple front-end development from integration with questionnaires. So your front-end developer, developers don't need to be familiar with FHIR. They just doing the front-end stuff, and you're doing the integration. Yeah. As a result, it is much faster in building UI, and I think you at least should try to build forms in this way in your application. And if you have any question, you can ask me. Yeah. Also, feel free to reach me via email or LinkedIn, or during FHIR North Conference, you can message me at FeedLoop. Yeah. That's all. And if you have some questions, I can answer to them.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ilya. For the audience, we have about 2 minutes left, so there's time for 1 or 2 questions if any come through. Ilya, maybe while we're waiting, like you kind of recommended at the start of the presentation, again toward the end, the use of kind of a FHIR first approach to designing applications, and then spoke a little bit about the interaction between the questionnaire and the form developed with the questionnaire and the backend using the FHIR API. Are the ideas that you showed and the approach you showed using the questionnaire resource to control the UI elements and other things available when the application backend isn't a FHIR native server and you're not talking to the application using the FHIR API?
Sorry? Could you please repeat the question?
I think my question was really whether or not the approach you described, which was using the questionnaire resource to kind of build the front end application, can that be used when the back end application isn't a FHIR native server?
So I think it is required to have a FHIR server on the backend because some advanced tools like population extraction require FHIR API to be used. But from other hand, your backend could pretend to be something like FHIR, because if you follow FHIR, it's more like set of guides how to create resources and work with them. If you create, if you build in your backend in a way very similar to FHIR, I think you can leverage advantages of this approach. Yeah. And one more thing. So in general, you always can build forms by using some declarative language. So you can just reuse this idea that you have. So the questionnaire is a data, and you are defining your form by defining data. It's like the main idea here. And for cases when you're not using FHIR, you can do something similar, but design it completely from scratch. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ilya. I don't see other questions coming through.
Okay.
If folks have questions they want to direct you offline, you're open to them reaching you through the channels that you've got on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ilya. Great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And thank you to our audience members. Hope to see you all again at FHIR North tomorrow. Have a great evening and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah. See you next day. Bye-bye.